So hello and welcome to this members-only breakfast session. Thank you so much to Plus Accounting for sponsoring these sessions. I'm Rifa, CMO at WiredSussex, and we power the amazing work at the Fusebox with so many innovative startups in one space. If you'd like a tour, meet some of our residents, see Chris, our innovation manager, or you can have a look at thefuseboxbrighton.com. So thank you so much to our guest speaker for taking the time to be with us today, to share his knowledge. Please welcome Clive Bonny.
Thank you very much indeed. And thanks for coming, everybody. How are you? Technician is on me already.
Sorry.
I was on my way to work today. And I'll get here so we can be recorded. And I was very impressed with a sign I came across. So I took a photo of it with my phone. And I'm going to ask the audience to stick their hands up as soon as they think they know what sign I am referring to. Don't shout out, but I'm going to give you some clues as to what the sign contained. Bare-faced, curve it, spy monkey, tidy, vetigraph, blue bag, posh totty, jolly wise. Anyone care to guess what I'm referring to here? We have an answer. Yes, please.
That's the sign for the companies in this building.
Excellent. I love those words. They are words that have innovation underneath them, and more important, they are words that are so much more easily protected than Clive Bonny Limited. And it's true, you know, if you've got a unique word, or indeed, if your word is well known, then a great way of protecting it is to have a unique stylized logo around it. And we're going to be talking about how easy it is to protect your intellectual property. You'll see on the board here that I've got the letter R against my name or my website at the bottom. Did you know that you can even register your domain name? And I've registered Consult SMP. And the reason I did that many years ago is it stops other people buying derivations of Consult SMP with all the other global connotations. It means I don't have to spend money on other domains to protect my domain. And if people come up with my domain, I can chase them down with my trademark certificate and get them to stop it. It's a big problem because domain name sellers do not check IP, intellectual property registers. They will sell anyone domain names even if they are owned by third parties and registered by third parties. So that's one of my initial tips. Do consider protecting and registering your domain name because it can save you money and it can stop other people taking business from you online, from inquirers who otherwise need to come to you. So, Dragon's Den. I used to work with Dragon's Den in the early days. I no longer work with Dragon's Den, but I do something very similar. I work with crowdfund platforms. And crowdfund platforms are wonderful ways of getting access to money, cheap money. Last year, the year before, about £500,000 on average was given to startups and very small businesses. And when I say given, I mean given, because the money was handed over in exchange for shares, handed over with no obligation for collateral, handed over with no interest payments due, handed over with not even a deadline set for repaying the money. But of course, investors do like their money paid back. Typically, they expect to be paid back 5 to 7 years later. But the point I'm making here is that Dragon's Den were very keen, and still are very keen, on IP protection. If you actually watch this program, they'll always ask, who owns the trademark? Who owns the the descriptions, the designs of a product, the way it is formed if it's a food and drink product. It's all about ownership, because if you don't register, you don't own. So, very important point here. Bear in mind that IP ownership represents usually more than 50% of a business's asset value. So it is well worth protecting. And we're going to look at the costs shortly as well. So, over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk about IP. I'm going to be available for questions afterwards. I've got a lot of information on my website as well, if you want to go there. Short video tutorials on this topic. But it's about risk management. And IP owners reduce risks and tend to make a lot more money. So we're going to explore how that happens. So, the benefits. What's in it for you? So, let's take a look. It's the most valuable asset you are likely to have. It enhances your reputation simply because if you're showing you own the brand name, the trademarks, the designs, etc., the copyright, people do respect you more, especially if you demonstrate your ownership online. It stops competition from coming in. I've mentioned domain names, but it genuinely does stop competition. And we're going to look at common competition activities that take your money. But one of those is Google AdWords. People are restricted in buying Google AdWords if you own the trademark and send that trademark certificate to the internet service provider. Thank you to our technician. On we go. So, legal barriers. One of the many things that people can do with a trademark is license or franchise it. Now, we have franchise expert accountants in the corner through Vicky and Mark. For those who want to understand more about franchising, excellent value to talk to them afterwards. But let me just emphasize this. I work with trainers, I work with management consultants, coaches, other service providers, many of whom are creating their own content, and they're not protecting that content. Whereas if they did protect that content, copywriting protects it, trademark protects it, design registration protects it, they are enabled to license that. And by licensing to, say, 10 other people, they are multiplying their revenues 10 times. Yeah? They're getting their content, their intellectual property into the marketplace at an accelerated rate, producing more revenues. Indeed, one well-known trainer who was featured in the Sunday Times earlier this year, who was turning over £40,000 a year as a mum at home, working part-time, has converted within 12 months to a revenue of over £1 million by using a licensing process for her online training content. So, that is an interesting example that perhaps you could consider following. Future innovation. It stops also you being sued for legal infringement. I'm going to ask you to make a guess, please, audience. What percentage of small firms suffer legal intellectual property infringement claims? Any guesses? 50. Any others? Spot on. Trust plus accounting to know the answer. That's 1 in 3. It's a serious problem. But we don't read about it in the news, do we? Why is that, do you think? It's small cases. It never gets to court because people don't want their name in court for IP theft. So these are settled out of court. So we don't hear about it. But lawyers, IP attorneys, make most of their money out of infringement suits, not out of registering trademarks. It's a big problem, and therefore registration of ownership avoids that problem. So, and we've talked about domain names. How do you protect? What's the strategy here? I suggest belt and braces. Simply because you don't want to rely on just one way to protect. So, internal protections, if you employ other people, if you employ subcontractors, then it makes sense to have what we call non-disclosure agreements. These are confidentiality contracts, or clauses in their terms. If you employ people, always please check their IT awareness for data protection and for scammers. That's very important. It's still IP. It's still risk. If you work at home or employ people who work at home or subcontractors, have a policy and a procedure for them to protect your IP on their IT equipment. On the outside, if you are a freelancer or run a business, have you got an assignment from your website designer? Because the author automatically owns IP. If they have not passed that ownership to you, formally in writing, they remain owners to it. Are you making it clear on the website and on any documentation you supply, briefings, articles, all sorts of things like magazines, who owns the copyright? Make it clear. And the Information Commissioner's Office is wonderful for collecting money from people if they do not register their company on data protection. So are you registered for data protection on the ICO website? And the fines for simply not registering are £4,000. And you get fined if you are misusing data and do not apply their policies and procedures. So please check that bit out as well. All this can be ascertained in a gap analysis. And this is one of the offers to you people today on the IP review. So the IP review can cover all sorts of these areas and help you prioritize any actions that need to be taken. We mentioned 30%. It is an issue, and you can avoid this issue by undertaking a simple search. I would recommend you used a qualified, trained person to help with the search, because there are over 1 million trademark registered trademarks online, and it takes a long time to go through those if you're not trained in the search engine filters. And there are several IP registers online to look at. So there's UK, there's EU, there's world. Trademark registers are different to design registers, etc. So for the sake of £100, it's well worth getting a proper search done. A question to you: have any of you done an intellectual property search on your brand names or your company names? Hands up those who have. You probably did yourself, Darryl.
In my previous business, I got someone to do it.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well worth protection. One of the funny things is I often come across the letters TM. Now, everyone thinks, well, that must mean they're trademarked. It means the opposite. They are not trademarked. So this is wonderful news for the IP attorneys out there who want to check them out and see if they're actually infringing any of their clients. So please avoid the letters TM. There is only one letter that you should be considering, and that is the letter R inside a small circle, because that means you have registration. If you do not have registration, please don't advertise the fact with the letters TM. If you are involved in promoting other people's products or yours or services, there are different ways of protection. Here is an example. The trademark can be registered. The design, that is the shape, the visual appearance can be registered. The artwork, labels can be copyrighted. It's automatic. And if it involves Some hidden workings, which are unique, those can be registered as patents as well. But it is important, if you have any registrations, to put that letter R in there to let other people know. Is it expensive? No, it's not. Now, of course, I do come across many people who say to me, well, Clive, I've been charged £800 for a trademark. Well, now, IP attorneys they do have big offices. Yeah, they're very expensive. But you don't need to go to a big office IP attorney. This is not an expensive process, and it's a long-lasting process. It should be really seriously considered. So please do consider this properly, because by investing a couple of £100 for 10 years protection, which is renewable for life, you could end up having a very valuable asset, and more so, and IP plus accounting will tell us probably that in mergers and acquisitions, IP value says a lot about the business. Bit of bad news, sorry about this, but I come across too many people who try to register for themselves, and they make mistakes on the forms. They don't get the descriptions correct. They haven't done a search properly, and there's someone out there who objects and chucks the trademark out. 10,000 people every year, including lawyers, because only 1 in 10 lawyer is actually trained in intellectual property protection and registration, make these mistakes. So check whoever's doing it. Are they trained to do it? Are they certified to do it? Common mistakes as well. You can't protect a description of your trade. Yeah. If it's a common slogan, you can't protect it. But if you tweak your common slogan, you can protect it. Logos, if they're looking like other people's logos, which are registered, they will be thrown out as well. And place names, in other words, where you work, shore and by sea, designer, can't be protected because you're describing where you work. The royalty and royal emblems can't be used as well. So lots of things that get in the way. And bear in mind there's some places where also you think you've got ownership, such as Companies House, but you haven't, because Company House names are not registered IP names. IP registers are separate to Companies House. They should always be looked at before companies are registered officially at Companies House. About 20% of Companies House registration names could infringe others if they were seriously looked at. So be aware of some of these mistakes. Now, here's a letter I received, Strategic Management Partners. It was an invoice from another company. There are a lot of scammers out there. So when you go through protection and registration, bear in mind they are publicized online, and the scammers look at who's publicizing your designs, your registrations, and they may try and get a little bit of extra money from you in order to confuse you into thinking you need to do a little bit more. So be aware, lots of scammers out there. A good trademark agent or IP attorney will tell you how to avoid them. Designs, really important, very underestimated. I mentioned that a design registration costs as little as £60 for up to 10 designs. Why is design important? It's not just about a product and protecting the way it's looking and the unique designs about it, but you can also register business processes as a design. In other words, if you've got a certain way of doing things, a customer journey, a particular training process, you can protect that. And once you've got registration, it becomes a criminal offence to copy it. Whereas without that extra protection, that £60 that lasts for 5 years, it's a civil offence, and it's much more difficult to pursue it. And it means you've got to pursue it, not the criminal authorities. So if you've got ownership, you can pass the case to the criminal authorities and keep your hands clean and your time safe. But registration needs to be careful. There's some do's and don'ts here that I'm sharing. Basically, you've just got to take a picture of what it is actually you're protecting and not finger marks, backgrounds, shadows, and other items. One application can protect a number of different things. So here's an example of Mr. Teddy Bear and associated designs, all protected with one application. Isn't that wonderful? Value for money. A small point about designs, as we've got one or two designers here, and that is when you come up with a design, please check it out with customers or suppliers or members of the team or contractors. Make sure that they think it will work as well. I come across quite a few designs myself, and I think they probably won't work, and I suggest people go back and test them with the marketplace. If you do make a mistake in designing something which is similar, confusingly similar, to another product, it can be a very expensive mistake. Here we have an example. A designer came up with a cutlery design. It was copied by Argos, and it cost them not only a £150,000 criminal offence penalty and all the nasty publicity that went with that, but also they had to pay an ongoing licence fee too. So checking and searching design registers can be helpful in avoiding this kind of problem. Another mistake. Have you ever been to airports and seen kiddies carrying these funny cases around, dragging them around? It was indeed. Well spotted. Yes, and the dragons liked it, but the dragons failed to check the IP certificates. They asked, was it registered as a design? The answer was yes. They went to pumped some money in. I think they gave about 60 grand in. But the problem was that the registration failed to register derivatives. And here we have the derivative. It was actually taken to court. Kiddie Case lost it. Trunky lost it to Kiddie Case, and it cost Trunky, in terms of revenues of sales lost, in the region of £6 million for failing to put in a derivation or a number of derivations with that initial £60 fee. And they used an IP attorney. I shan't mention their names. This is mine. Let me emphasize that actually descriptions are really important. I've registered my logo and my company name, so Strategic Management Partners there. Although Strategic Management Partners are common words, if you combine it with a unique logo, you can protect and own it. So I've done that, but more important, I have put in descriptions for not only my existing services, but my planned services. There's lots there, it's too many to show you, but the point I'm making here is that descriptions are really important. Getting the narratives right, not only for current, but for future protections, very important. More money is lost through lack of protection of IP than through other criminal sources for small firms. It's a lot of money. This is small firm money, 9 billion a year lost. And where does it go? These are how small firms lose money. Web domains, we've mentioned. AdWords, we've mentioned. Copying, a regular problem, especially if you're in services, you've got training or coaching or other content. People coming in, perhaps bad leavers taking information to the next employer. Clients also are naughty sometimes. They're naughty because they might ask you for a quote if you haven't done business with them before, and they might then use your quotation, your proposal, in fact, with your competition in order to beat down the competition price and use them. If your proposals show in commercial confidence and copyright, they're not allowed to do that. And if they do that, you can chase them. But it does mean if you don't do this, you could be losing money. Yeah, you could be sharing information unnecessarily. So be careful with all parties. Tax credits available. Do you want to mention something about tax credits plus accounting? Mark? Vicky? Does it pay well? Quite well. Any examples? Well, let me emphasize, this really does pay well because it doesn't necessarily cost you anything. Do you do no win, no fee, as it were, or is it chargeable?
No, we're usually fixed fee, not percentage of time, but a lot of party specialists will do it.
Okay, but it's still good value for money to get claims done. So, and this can also include things like innovation on designs and any work related to that. Here's an example, a recent client. These are all published and protected now, but they work in the health sector, especially mental health. And it's a good example of their motto, power up your mind before it powers you down. Notice how they've used the motto, converted it slightly, then it becomes unique and protectable. They've registered that. They've got a lovely logo to register. And they've even registered their design, the process of how they work. And that means now they can go into the licensing area and multiply their income. So if this small business, it's a mum at home, then goes out to employ one franchisee or one licensee for each county in the UK, she can multiply her income 50 times by doing that and having a license coming in. And if they 50 people paying £3,000 a year. That's £150,000 a year coming in through license fees. Isn't that wonderful? This is one of mine. It's a building design, and I've registered it for the grand sum of £60, but it stops anybody else copying it. This is my thought about how the future of home garden officers could look. And I'm now about to take this design online to ask for funds from people who may want to buy shares in my business. And I'm going to be asking for between £150,000 and £300,000. And because I have that IP protection, they know that for the next 25 years, nobody else can sell this type of design, the ellipsoid-shaped design, in the UK, which is wonderful because I'm protecting my margins as well. Here's another of my clients. He runs the Penny Farthing Club, and he's just started to license use of running penny farthings. Do you know who this is? Neil Lawton, his name is, arch explorer around the world, Everest climber. He does all sorts of funny things, but he's Brighton-based, and it's a wonderful way for him to not only get this interesting offer out, but also make some money through licensing. So, lots of considerations here. Now we have a few minutes for Q&A. I'm happy to take questions either now in public or if you've got separate questions. I'm happy to stay behind for one-to-ones. And please do take advantage. Don't know if you want to circulate some information here whilst we're doing the Q&A. If you want to invest in a free IP review, it will literally only take 2 minutes to tick a few boxes on that form, but also take a look at my top 10 tips that were published in the Sussex Business Times last month. So thank you, and questions, please.